If you're anything like I was, you've got a pedal board full of mismatched patch cables that are a little spotty from gig to another. You're always hunting for one that's going bad. They don't fit. You can't squeeze enough pedals on your pedal board. That's how I was until I discovered Tour Gear Design's patch cables. They're the smallest patch cables in the game. They're rock solid, extremely dependable, and I love what they make. And now I've partnered with Tour Gear Designs to get you 10% off your order by using the affiliate code down below in the description box. You can get 10% off using code 40WATT, 40WATT, but this deal gets even better. For my Patreon supporters, you actually are eligible for 20% off. You have to register with the same email address you use on Patreon and message the company, say you're one of my Patreon supporters, and you can get 20% off your order with Tour Gear Designs, the best patch cables in the game. This podcast is made possible in part through a partnership with TrueFire. TrueFire is the most comprehensive guitar learning experience on the internet, with over 51,000 guitar lessons from the best educators in the world. It makes TrueFire the #1 most trusted music education resource for guitar players. We as guitar players sometimes get fixated on the gear that we play, and we neglect the skill level that we play. And many of us have a hard time finding instructors locally. TrueFire bridges that gap. You can find my affiliate link below to get 40% off with my code 40WATT of your first purchase through TrueFire. Learn, practice, play, TrueFire. This podcast is made possible by the support of many wonderful people over on Patreon. If you would like to support this show and help make sure it keeps going, you can go over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast, where for as little as $3 a month, you can help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you for all of your support. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 40 Watt Podcast. My name is Philip. I am your host. Super excited to be with you this week. Got something a little different this week. Y'all know that I love to get stories from musicians and players, and don't get me wrong, all the gear creators are great, and I love getting people who build the stuff we play on here. But I love more than anything getting people that play the instruments and play the music. But before we get to that, I've got a couple of housekeeping things to take care of. I want to thank first and foremost all of my Patreon supporters who give me dollars of their hard-earned money every month, and it's fantastic, and it's how this show keeps going. I greatly appreciate it, and to show my appreciation, I read your names off at the top of the episode, and I'll continue to do that until there's just too many names, and we're going to get there before too long. So thank you to all of these Patreon supporters: Henry Klubakowski, Brian May, but not that Brian May, Henrik Nordvang and Nordvang Custom Pedals, Tony DeGraw, Steve Rao of the 60 Cycle Hum Podcast, Andrew Bimson, Abe Matthews, Jordan Glash, Duncan Watson, Andy Johns, David Evangelista of the Guitar Dads Podcast, Blake Jefferson, Nick Call, Andrew Hensley, Alan Gresham, Dan Pilver of Lewitt Audio, Scott Hamilton of the Effects Loop Podcast, Andy Koning, Jim Burns, Tom Kelly, Heath Batt, Ben Fair of Electromotive Sound Company, Rick Calhoun of Honey Picks, Jeffrey Walks, and Kyle Harris. Thank you so much for your support. I greatly appreciate everything you do, giving up, at least one coffee a month to help support and keep this show going, and it's fantastic. All right, that's all the housekeeping. We're going to get rolling. So today, I'm super excited. I'm going to use the term new artist. It feels derogatory because I've been doing it for a little while, but we got the band Briscoe, which is made up of Philip and Truett. Philip, I can remember your name very easily, like I said earlier before we got started. And so, how are you guys doing?
Dude, we're doing good. We're doing real good. We're down here in Austin, Texas, feeling hot.
Yeah. Heat hadn't left y'all yet. I mean, it's still hot here, but it's not like it was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's still cooking down here, but there's hope on the horizon.
Yeah. I was in Chicago a few weeks ago for the Fretboard Summit, and the first day I was there, the first day of the summit on Thursday, it was 102 degrees in Chicago, and I was like, I thought I was going to get to escape 100 degrees because here in Mississippi we had seen 100-degree heat indexes plus a bunch of over 100 days for like 6 weeks. It's like It's the hottest summer I can ever recall. Yeah, it's too much. So you guys are down in Austin. You got a band called Briscoe. We're going to talk about this because I've been listening to your record today, trying to really familiarize myself with it. And I finally, you've got a new record coming out. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Um, but I found it really interesting that I was listening to your record, and then today I went back and listened to the EP that's over on Spotify,
Yeah,
and it's interesting to see the shift in the direction y'all went. So we got a bunch to talk about. I'm not going to keep going. So let's do the first thing, the 30,000 square foot view. How'd you get into playing music? How'd you meet? How'd you decide this is a thing you wanted to do?
absolutely. So let's start with how we met. Um, Truett and I met at a summer camp in the Texas Hill Country when we were about 12 years old. We
Oh
are
wow.
now both 22, so that was about 10 years ago. And we were both in like the very beginning stages of musicianship. We were both learning guitar at the time. We were both like beginning to sing in front of people, and so we got to like kind of form that relationship with music together from a pretty young age, which I think is probably benefiting us now.
Oh, definitely. I think that's absolutely a big deal. It's sort of like it's not quite the same thing as blood harmony, that thing that families have when their voices mesh together. But
Yeah,
the earlier you can get together and be making music together, it absolutely benefits.
for sure. Yeah.
So you met 12 years ago. You're in the beginning stages of learning to play guitar and write songs. Um, when did you really start to play out as a duo, as a group?
Yeah, great question. So I started Briscoe when I was in high school by myself
Okay.
as just a songwriting outlet, really. So True and I are from different towns. I'm from San Angelo, Texas. He's from San Antonio. So we would like I would go down and stay with him in San Antonio. Sometimes he'd come to San Angelo. So we kept in touch. But Briscoe began as my solo thing, um, and then whenever we both got to the University of Texas is when it officially became a duo. And that's when
Okay.
we started performing together, doing backyard shows, playing smaller club rooms, whatever we were doing. That's when we started writing together, recording the EP, and that's when Briscoe really found its footing, I would say. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. So, was there how quickly are you still the principal songwriter, or Truett, have you started to add in the songwriting, or is it how's that working? Because I know that for some songwriters it can be really nerve-wracking to bring another person into their process if they're
Mm.
really used to doing it on their own.
Yeah, yeah. So, like Philip said, when we were in high school and he kind of started writing songs and whatnot, as he started to play shows, he would ask me to come play with him. And this was kind of before it was officially Briscoe, even. So we started to play shows together and all that good stuff. And then, like you said, when he was a year older than me in school, and so he was already in Austin, and that's kind of when we started talking about, hey, what would it look like if you joined this thing? We made it a duo and whatnot. But I think once we joined forces, it was kind of like from that point forward, just kind of like a duo. It was, it wasn't like, all right, hey, I'm going to write all the songs, but you come in and you play this, whatever. It was just like, hey, this is our duo moving forward. Like, let's, and so I came in with some songs that I had written already and continued to write. And then we, wrote a couple songs together. And yeah, so we now just kind of share, but the writing duties, but it's all been pretty natural so far. It hasn't been really like, okay, you write 5 songs for the record and then I'll write 5 songs. It's just been like, hey, these are the best, 15 or so songs that we think we have written right now, and we'll narrow it down to 10. And I think there's like, it's not a, like you said, it's not an even thing, and we want our best songs to be on the record. And so if Philip writes 9 really good songs and I write one, then that's fine, or vice versa. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So I was listening to the record today, and like I said, it's very um it has an interesting progression to me, and listeners, as we're recording this, it's not out. Y'all are listening to this on the Thursday before it comes out, so y'all are going to be getting a little bit of a peek into what to expect when it drops. If you listen to this podcast on the day it releases tomorrow, so September 15th, correct? Still,
That's right.
um, just making sure that Taylor Swift didn't decide to release an album on the same day, and y'all needed to move that.
Seriously.
Apparently, that's what the movie's doing. Um, but
Oh, wow.
I I digress. So yeah, and a lot of it's very acoustic bass, very very. I don't want to use the term folk because it's not quite folky. I don't know the right term. Americana is such a good term for it, but it's also very. It's a broad term. Like there's a lot of things that are Americana,
Yeah.
and so. But I did find it very interesting listening to it. That it's very first of all, it's filled with harmonies, which I don't hear nearly as much as I'd like anymore in music. It's very acoustic, filled with lots of lot of slide guitar, a lot of resonator. It sounds like, but then like it gets near the end, and then it starts to, I don't know. It's especially that last track. That last track rocks pretty hard. It's pretty good. I was listening to that literally minutes before y'all got on the call, and I was like, okay, I see where it's going. It's like this growth. So I went back and listened to the EP that y'all have on Spotify. And which one of you plays the saxophone?
Sax man.
Okay, Philip, you play the saxophone. Got it. Yeah. So that the EP is kind of funky. Kind of, I don't know. I had got shades of everything from like the Americana thing down to like I'm gonna date myself a little bit, but like everybody's listeners, you're gonna need to go listen to this record. Edwin McCain had a record, his very first record, before he ever had that hit with "I'll Be" and was everywhere, right? And it was this really kind of funky New Orleans thing. It's so good. Everyone should go listen to it. It's I'm real bad with titles. It's his first record. You'll find it. Jesters, Dreamers, and Thieves, I think, or at least that's a song on the record. For some reason, I think it's the title of the album as well. But it's real funky. So y'all had this in the demo, and I see that y'all kind of like you kind of found like, okay, these are what we really want to do. Is the sax gone? Are you ever going to bring the sax back?
Yeah, so the sax only makes an appearance in that last song, like you're saying.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think it's been. I think there definitely is a pretty big difference. Well, I'll say this. I think the EP has a range from similar to the
Yes.
record to, like you're saying, this big funk. So it's got like quite a big difference there. And I think our new record, West of It All, kind of hones in on one section of the EP represented by only a couple songs. And I think more than anything, that is just reflecting of how we've grown as songwriters and the lyrics that we write now, and the instrumentation that we want in order to convey what we're trying to say. And I think that if you look at a song on the EP, like "Hooped Earrings" is our most popular song right
Mm-hmm.
now from the EP, and what is it trying to say? I don't really know. It's fun.
Yeah.
And then I think you listen to the record and you're like, okay, these songs are a lot more meaningful. I think I think we still tried to retain a lot of those catchy melodies, clever lyrics, but tried to have them hold more weight while we did it. So I think that the record kind of leans into that, and I think that the instrumentation reflects that. I think a lot of it's still fun. I'm not trying to say it's not fun,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's less of like a gimmick, if you will.
Well, that's kind of what I heard. So I'm glad you said it that way because this led me to a next like realization as I was listening to it. Um, the EP, and I'm gonna say this with as much reverence as I can because I do mean it with reverence. The EP has that college band vibe to
Yeah,
it. It's kind of like back porch party, 20 people dancing, having a good time. The saxophone especially not only reminded me of the Edwin McCain thing, but also kind of a throwback to a Dave Matthews thing. Like I could hear a few influences there. But then I think your second track on the EP, again, I'm terrible with titles and I don't have it in front of me because I didn't want to be switching between a bunch of tabs.
Sure.
But the second song on the EP really felt like the thing y'all grabbed and we're like, here's what we're gonna um, write a record around, this vibe, this energy, where you focused on songwriting.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it up just so we can make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Tell me a second. Yeah. Tell me. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think. I mean, the EP, like you said, is fun. It's a little more, does a little more exploring, if you will.
Sure.
But I think at our core, you said folk band earlier, and I know that term gets tossed around out the wazoo, but I would say that's our musical inspiration and our kind of roots are certainly in that folk sound, and I think that allows the harmonies to shine through a ton, which is a big reason we love it. And yeah, and there's also just it feels like we when people ask us what our genre is, we kind of say, we'd say Americana, but nobody really knows what that means anymore, and it means so many things. So we kind of just say like folk rock. And it just feels like, in a day and age where so many people are doing the indie pop or indie rock or this and that, it just like our natural tendency was to cling to that folk sound or like the singer-songwriter days of the late 60s and 70s and just kind of build off of that.
Yeah. So yeah, having said that, I'm really curious about some of your inspirations talking about that, because your harmony rich, the acoustic driven stuff, especially is so I feel like I'm insulting every time I use any buzzword, throwback or retro or again any genre. I don't like to call anyone any genre anymore. I hate it. But who are your influences? Because you do have this older sound, and y'all are 22. I mean, you're young, you're really finding your voice, yet you have this really classic sound. Who are some of your influences in both your songwriting and in your performing?
Yeah, so Truett kind of touched on the late 60s, 70s. That's like what we were primarily raised on. Artists ranging from James Taylor, Paul Simon, Neil Young, John Prine, kind of more singer-songwriter, into bigger bands like the Eagles, and how they were able to kind of maintain their integrity as just like kind of country rock band, but still had these beautiful lyrics, wonderful songwriting, and crazy harmonies. So that's kind of our golden age in our opinions, and then I think that kind of translates to a lot of modern influences that are that think the same thing. We love the Avett Brothers and how they write these beautiful songs and portray them with beautiful harmonies and kind of folky instrumentation behind it, and a whole bunch of other modern influences as well. So yeah, that's kind of where we draw from.
Yeah, I tell people all the time I'm a huge fan of the Eagles. People need to give them another shot. People who say they don't like the Eagles, I'm like, you're probably just tired of hearing Hotel California. That's really what it is. You're just tired of hearing that 9-minute opus on the radio. Still, I think the longest song I've ever heard them play the actual full version of ever on the radio. They used to play that acoustic version where the intro. I once got out of my car as the intro started, left it running. We're in the South, as we do. Ran inside a convenience store and came back out to the intro still playing. It's like, this is the longest intro in all of recorded music.
Yeah.
So you hear a lot of those influences, especially I love hearing like um, when I think of harmonies, I always think of Emmylou Harris. For some reason, she's always the first person that pops into my head
Yeah.
because I feel she's an absolute master at blending with anyone she ever sings with.
Yeah.
She almost vanishes and it just becomes one bigger voice. Um, so yeah, that age, I feel like she was part of that age of harmony, and I love hearing that in y'all's music, and hearing what y'all are doing. Especially, it feels like a very Texas sound. The things I've heard, do y'all feel like that influenced a lot of the Texas artists as well?
For sure. Yeah. I think one thing that we've tried to be, I say careful of, not that it would be a bad thing, but we just wanted to make sure that we differentiated ourselves from the get go, um, like the difference between a folk band and a country band, and
Yeah,
and whether we like to admit it or not, and I think we do. We've got tons of country music influence for sure. I mean, we grew up in Texas. We both love country music. Especially, I mean, even that, like we talked about, like the country music of the '70s, guys like Willie Nelson, and Waylon, and all those who are just making killer song after killer song. And so there's for sure some of that influence in there. But we it's a careful association because especially as we get out of the South into Texas, people up north and whatnot hear a banjo and are like, "Oh, country band," and we're like, "Well, not
yeah.
quite, but like sort of." And then we wear cowboy boots on stage and stuff, so it just that doesn't help. But
I don't know. I don't know that I hear a whole bunch of banjo on modern country radio anymore. So you may be fine.
exactly, it's
Uh,
all Nashville country these days anyway. So
Yeah, exactly. See, y'all are right there in the hotbed. I haven't talked about this whole bunch on the podcast because most of the time I'm talking about blues music. Being from Mississippi, I'm a big blues
come on,
fan. It's a primary form of music I play, but I love Texas, and I just call it Texas country.
yeah,
I'm a big Lyle Lovett fan.
mm-hmm.
Uh, just one of the greatest songwriters, and nobody can even argue me. Like it's not going to be done. Then you guys are in Austin, which gave us one of my favorites is oh my gosh, she was just in my head, Willis.
Willis Allen Ramsey.
Oh yeah, that
Uh,
wasn't who I was thinking. I'm thinking last name Willis.
no
What
way.
is her first name?
So
Um,
excited.
I, I, I'm really sad that I can't see again,
Will.
y'all. I've told y'all many times I'm real bad at names and titles and things like that. Um, uh, but I also think of we just lost a big name today. Charlie Robinson passed away today as we're recording, and he was a big introduction for me into Texas country music. And Kelly Willis. It was Kelly Willis. That's the name. Sorry, that was gonna bug me till I got it. Also, you get into the northern Texas red dirt scene. You get some of that more electrified, a little more raucous, but it's still very its own thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that about y'all's sound. It's what I call real country music. Y'all come at me if you want to. People get mad at me when I
We'll be
use terms
standing
like
right next to you when they do.
exactly right. There's nothing wrong with you guys can't see, but I have a pedal steel to my right, and I've been remaking myself learn pedal steel because there's something about that sound.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And y'all capture a whole bunch of that. Now y'all also recorded this in North Carolina with a producer that's kind of known for some of this modern era of acoustic artists that are coming out. Let's talk about that process. What made you want to go all the way out to North Carolina to record it? Because there's got to be some pretty amazing studios in Austin, Texas.
For sure. Absolutely, yeah. So Brad Cook, our producer for the record, we first heard a few of the records that stand out. He did Houndmouth's most recent record, Brent Cobb, Keep 'Em on the Toes, and Nathaniel Rateliff's most recent record, The Future. And these are all just like artists that we love, that we have songs from these records on our playlist that we listen to daily. And I think it was so funny because our management was like, hey, like I want y'all to start looking into different producers, um, and just start looking at albums you love and who produced those, and then like look into where they recorded all this different stuff. And it was just like Brad Cook's name was like here and here and here and here. So it was just such a dream come true to, and then it turns out like before even like really talking about this, that he was actually our manager manages him as well. He's on our management company.
Oh, wow.
So we had this connection. So we had a pretty good foot in the door. Our manager kind of vouched for us, and I was like, Brad, like new band, want y'all to meet up. We flew out to Durham just to meet him and shoot the bull for a couple days, and ended up like really, really loving how he was getting behind us and bringing life to our music. And I think that he really, really loved working with us because I think it was exciting. I think, he believed in the raw talent and songs that we were bringing in, and he was excited to help us, make this into something. So it was really just a great relationship with Brad, and so fortunate that we did have, a foot in the door through management that we could come together and cut the record with Brad.
And if I could add to that too, like as new musicians, as young new musicians, like having a guy like Brad Cook, a seasoned producer, believe in you and be in full support of you and be excited about the songs that we brought to the table as well. It's just, there's nothing better. It's just such a confidence boost and such a like when a guy like that is on your team, it's just like, wow, okay, maybe we really can do this thing, and
it helps when you have someone that's got your back who's sort of seen all the mistakes already,
for sure,
and they can help you kind of stay away from a few of them. Although there's always that first record think you know better than the guy who's been there too.
Sure.
I was once that guy in a studio when I was in school, thought I knew more than my professor, and got told real quick. I learned real quick I did not.
Yeah.
But yeah, North Carolina is another one of those areas of the country that's sort of been part of the last 20 years of like acoustic resurgence in music. Our artist names are slipping my mind, but that Asheville area especially seemed to like be a hotbed for this style of harmony-based acoustic forward music.
For sure. Yeah, and yeah, there's the music scene out there is, I think we hardly knew, the magnitude of it, but there's just all sorts of wonderful musicians and bands. And so Brad is based in Durham, North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, sort of the Research Triangle, as they call it, is just filled with wonderful musicians. Some of the members of the Avett Brothers, live out there. We recently met the band Mipso, which is just killer folk band, great harmonies, based out of that area as well.
Watch House.
Just
so
many really, really talented musicians. So that was a huge draw. And also, Brad had just really, his brother, Phil Cook, is a just wonderful, one of the most talented musicians I've ever met or been around. He's crazy.
Oh, wow.
And, so we, worked with Brad, and then all of a sudden now we have access to Phil Cook, who's wonderful. And then Matt McCon, who drummed on the record, is the drummer for Bon Iver, and he lives 3 houses down from Brad. Just, stuff like that. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And so, yeah, it was, it's a treat. North Carolina, they've got it going on out there.
Yeah, the music scene over there feels like it's slept on a little bit.
For sure.
People aren't really paying attention to it. They're looking at places like, of course, Nashville, LA, New York, to a degree, Austin, where y'all are, obviously. By contrast, because it's been so long since I've been to Austin, what's the music scene like in Austin?
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's interesting because it's like locally, like we got to do a couple residencies at venues down on South Congress, like smaller clubs, Sea Boys and the Continental Club, which bring awesome bands in every night. like, kind of a lot of bluesier acts, a lot of like rockier, but super fun stuff. And so there's this like kind of old Austin music scene people, and then there's a bunch of people that are from Austin, like Gary Clark Jr., Shaky Graves, and then there's also just like everybody's moving to Austin, man. So it's interesting because if you like just live in Austin and experience the music scene, you only know like, or at least we're not like super into the. I mean, we want to be, but we're not like big names yet, so we're not
Right.
in this Austin music scene. So you hear stories about like Charlie Crockett and Leon Bridges hanging out down the road or something. And if you just like go on South Congress, you might not see that, but there's so much happening that's unseen, like kind of not behind closed doors, but at the same time, they're not accessible. So it's interesting. It's really interesting. There's a great mix, and I think I'm excited for South by Southwest this year because that's an awesome time for all these artists, these big names, to just be like, all right, this week we're playing on, the street, and we're doing free shows, and we're playing small venues. I think that'll really put it in perspective for us. We'll do our first big South by this year.
That's awesome. I love that festival. We were talking before we started recording. Years ago, I played an artist showcase, actually with my sister's band. I was playing bass in that band. And I wish I could remember the name of the place we played. It was it was periphery of South by, and so it was my only experience for South by, and it was insane. I did not fully understand how big a music festival that was.
Yeah.
Because my idea of music festival, like I grew up going to Beale Street Music Festival in Memphis, which is still big. That's a big festival. 3 or 4 or 5 main stages, plus they have a blues tent. And so that was what I thought of. No. South by is like all of Austin.
Well, it's crazy. And so like you said, so you've got your like official South by Southwest events, right? That tends to be bigger artists and whatnot. And so there's those happening. And then every record label or music production company or whatever is doing their showcase for their bands. And so then there's like all these official showcases going on. And then every music venue in town is doing like their own South by. So then they've got bands coming in there. And then every clothing store, and we've got all these brands based in Austin like Yeti and Howler Brothers and people like that now are doing, okay, well, now we're going to do a Howler showcase. And so it's madness. And then there's unofficial South by events going on, and it's crazy, but it's so much fun. We have gotten to play a couple events, but like Philip was saying, excited to hit it big. But it's just fun to be at and get to see like all these. I mean, one of my favorite was 2 years ago. We were watching Houndmouth play at this hotel on South Congress, and it was like, it was completely full, and so there was like no room, and so we were kind of up on this little like the side of the parking lot where this was taking place, like up on this kind of hill overlooking the show, on a fence, and it's just like such a special, like that just doesn't really happen. You don't get to see these big, wonderful bands like that really anywhere else that I've experienced. So it's a treat. It's a lot, but it's a treat.
Yeah. While we were there, I made it a point to go down to Antone's because I didn't know when I'd ever get back down to Austin because I don't really get to Texas very often. So I was like, okay, I've got to go to Antone's. As any kid who grew up a Stevie Ray Vaughan fan, of course I had, the typical, I'm going to be that typical guy. But I went on, so the night I was going there, it just happened to be that one of my favorite bands at the time was playing. So I was just super pumped that all that worked out. So I went to see Grace Potter and the Nocturnals back when she was still with and they absolutely ripped the roof off of that building. But before them, this is the kind of thing you never know is going on, and it just is. A band that I had never heard of was opening. Of course, most people, if you're into Americana or country music. You probably know this name now, but Courtyard Hounds was playing. And Courtyard Hounds is basically the Chicks, formerly the Dixie Chicks, without Natalie Maines. It's the sisters. And it was a band they put together when Natalie wanted to get off the road for a little bit and just, be a homebody. And they decided one was living in Austin, one was living in San Antonio. I don't remember which was living where, but they kept driving back and forth. And finally, and they kept writing, and they were like, let's just put together a band. And so they put together a band, and I got to see them open before Grace Potter.
Yeah.
And Jacob Dylan walks on stage and sings with them. And I was like, what is happening right now? So it's that kind of thing. The never know what's going to happen. And listeners, if you've not been to Antone's in Austin, Texas, it's smaller than you think it is.
Yeah.
It's not a huge club.
We played Antone's in January, actually.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Oh, it was great. It was at the time, it was our biggest headline show to date. It's not a huge room, like you said. It's like 400 cap.
Yeah.
But the way it's talked about, you'd think it's a big old venue. But it was so cool. I mean, just such a legendary. Both of my parents went to UT, and Philip's dad went to UT, and so they were going to Antone's back in the day and going to shows around town. So it's been fun to play all these venues that you hear so much about, and they just have such rich histories.
Yeah, it's such a cool town, such a cool music town. So here's a fun thing. So listeners, I'm sure they're wondering, because most of my listeners are all just guitar players. They're just bored guitar players. How nerdy do y'all get about guitars? Like, are y'all hardcore guitar people, or are you just like, this is my instrument to write songs, or you get really like nerdy into gear?
Personally, I'm much on the wave of, I primarily consider myself a songwriter.
Yeah.
And I use the guitar as a means to an end, which is songwriting. So I don't get that into it. I did get an old Martin, a 71 Martin D28 as a graduation gift. So that, like, I got a little bit into vintage guitars, acoustics for a minute, but that's it. Truett, though.
I'm pretty much in the same boat. I play more electric guitar than Phil does.
Okay.
So I'm starting to get a little into the gear, but I'm just, man, it's unnatural to us. I would agree that we're songwriters first, and we've got friends that are total gearheads, and they've tried and tried again to get us. I mean, the best way to sum it up is, so Phil plays. Well, I guess we both play a little bit of banjo in a live set, and for a while there, I mean, a banjo in a live context is hard to mic.
Yeah.
All that. And so Phil finally went out and bought just a couple pedals, like an EQ really, to kind of round it out a little bit. And he kind of built his own little pedal board. So it's just like, he had his guitar tuner, banjo tuner, EQ pedal.
It was a
compression and EQ for the banjo. And he fastened the pedals onto, I mean, imagine if you took like any 2x4 ever and then just like broke it on your knee and then like tossed it into a body of water, like a moving river, and let it kind of float down for a few hours. Then you picked it back up again and then fastened pedals onto it. And so that's like the extent of our pedal board.
Yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, maybe one of these days. I'm close, I think, to getting a very basic electric setup as we continue to, because some of our songs, like you're saying, like the last track on the record, it gets a little more into our rock and southern rock that we love, and so I'm starting to get more familiar with that stuff. But it certainly is not like a natural, very much not natural gearheads at all.
Honestly, it is the much saner approach. It is the better approach. I wish I were just I use this guitar to write songs. It's actually, growing up, I preferred songwriters and singers to guitar players. Even when I started playing guitar, people would ask me who my favorite guitarist was, and I didn't have an answer because I listened to songwriters, and that's actually was hardcore in my like country music phase, like 90s country.
Yeah.
I will forever and always love Pam Tillis. It will never go away. but yeah, so I was really into that kind of vibe. I am curious, totally tangential topic. So I listened to a pre copy of the record, obviously before this, but it had no liner notes. Please, did either of you play the harmonica on that last song? Who played the harmonica? Do you remember?
All the harmonica on the record was Phil Cook.
Whew,
So
Yeah, he's crazy.
the man can play.
He's,
That's all I'm saying.
he's
Holy cow!
all
he's
the
such great feel.
all the harmonica, dobro, electric slide, all that was Phil. I mean, he's great. It's wild. It was just such a joy that he was willing to be on our album. Honestly, it's crazy.
Harmonica is one of those instruments that when it's played well, it absolutely moves me at my core. And then when it's played badly, which seems to be more common, it moves my feet towards the door. So it's just the way it is.
That's
True. Well, it wasn't this Philip playing on that track, but he does play some harmonica in our live set, and he plays it sweet. So
Oh, nice.
don't let him upset you.
Well, see, I love that y'all are multi instrumentalists, because you're playing guitar, you're playing banjo. I'm assuming I have to ask, 5-string, or are you playing a banjo tuned like a guitar?
A 5-string normal tuned banjo, yeah.
Which no hate on those that do it with guitar tuning either, because
Little
I'm not gonna hate on them. Look, they got to work too. You know what I mean?
No, I know.
But yeah, so I like hearing that you play harmonica, guitar, banjo, do the vocals thing. I grew up in a musical culture where you had to be able to play everything, because you may get a call on Friday night, you're playing guitar for this guy. On Saturday, you may have to play bass for this guy. And then on a Tuesday gig, you got to play drums. Like my sister's one of the best multi-instrumentalists I know. And seeing people do that, I think that makes you the rounded musician that you are a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fun, and I think like the alto sax is kind of a testament to that. It was like whenever we first started Briscoe and first started writing songs, it was like, you know what? I think this song would be fun if we put a sax on it. So I played sax in the middle school band. I quit, then picked it back up, like when we were graduating high school to record it again. So then, I like have gotten pretty good at what I do on stage for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put any sheet music in front of me or told me to play anything besides a Briscoe song, then it's not gonna happen.
That's fine. There's I teach music theory lessons, and it's one of those things that I think everyone should learn some music theory. I don't think everyone should absolutely have to master music theory to be able to play music. That's the thing. If you want to write about music, you need to know music theory. If you want to perform music, some of it would help, but yeah, just play. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. So, guys, we're going to get real close to wrapping up here at the end of the show. And then we're going to go over to Patreon, and we are going to ask Patreon supporters. You know the question already. I'm going to ask them their question. I'm gonna see if they'll double it up and not all pick. Decide to pick the same answer all the way down. I'm gonna make them do it individually. So It's gonna be a fun episode. It always makes for a fun time. In the meantime, though, gentlemen, take a second. Your record's coming out tomorrow as listeners are listening to this. Obviously, is it actually? I shouldn't say obviously. Is it going to be on all the streaming platforms?
All the streaming platforms, yep.
All right. You also have a website, which is going to be linked down below. But if you just want to hear me say it, it's going to be Briscoe the Band. That's Briscoe, the band. Which you can read the name in the title of this podcast if you need to spell it. What else, guys? What you got coming up that maybe you want to tell folks about besides the record? Got any tours lined up or anything?
Yeah, we're kicking off. Well, we've kind of already done a few runs, but we're kicking off the rest of our first ever headline tour with the album release show here in Austin, Texas at Scoot In. And then after that, we are hitting the road. We're coming all over the place, going up East Coast, down through the Midwest. I'm trying to think the closest will be to Mississippi.
Maybe Lexington.
We're playing Lexington, Kentucky. We're playing Nashville, Tennessee. We're playing Atlanta,
Nashville's
Georgia.
pretty close to me.
But yeah, we're all over the place. So yeah, all of our tour dates are on the website. We've also got a whole new line of merch to go with this new record that we're really excited about. And yeah, we're excited to hit the road and play some shows, get in front of people.
Awesome. So, listeners, you can find all the links for everything down below, including social media or any other dirt I can dig up. You might find some of the baby photos linked down there below. Who knows? So I'm looking at the tour. Y'all are playing the Basement in Nashville too. I love the Basement.
Nice.
It's one of my favorite venues in Nashville. It basically got destroyed during the tornado in 2020, and they rebuilt. If I'm getting this correct, actually, my Nashville listeners are going to be mad at me right now so there's a basement and there's a basement east, and sometimes in my head I forget which one is which, because one of them's actually in a basement, the other is a bigger venue space, but the one that's actually in a basement was destroyed, and the building it was in got destroyed in 2020, and they were rebuilding. So I hope that's the right one. Now that I'm thinking about it.
I think it's just the Basement. So that sounds right. But
oh yeah, y'all are at the Basement. It is the Basement East that got the tornado report. Okay, good deal. Sorry, my brain Teflon coated. I don't remember things. Y'all know this. So all the links are below. Listeners, thank you so much for listening and hanging out with us. Watchers on YouTube, thank you for hanging out and watching with us. Be sure to subscribe, hit follow. I don't remember the plus sign. There are a bunch of things you can hit. Whatever you're listening to or watching in, hit the button so you know when new stuff is coming out. There's going to be links for all of Briscoe's social media down below. Make sure you do all the same things you just did for me for all their stuff. And in the meantime, gentlemen, thank you for coming on the podcast.
yeah, thank you for having us.
Philip, it's been awesome, man.
Yeah, it's always good to have another Philip on the show too, to make it ultra confusing when Truett says Philip, and it could be either one. But in the meantime, listeners, we're going to go over to Patreon, so y'all be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.